Hello and welcome to the Stories of Innovation, a podcast by World Vision International Nepal, and I'm your host Utsav Karel. In this episode, we will be exploring rainwater harvesting and eco-innovation with entrepreneur Suman Shakya, who is also the founder of SmartPani. Okay, welcome Suman in Stories of Innovation.
Thank you, Utsav.
In this podcast series, we try to unpack the stories of innovation, and you being an entrepreneur, you have got really fantastic journey of entrepreneur. Sometimes when you have this conversation, some of your ventures have been 20, 30 years ahead of time. And today, we want to hear more around your stories of how Suman Shakya evolved over the years as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, as a trainer, trying to help new innovators, different startups, and so many things. Okay, tell us the stories.
Where do I start, Utsav?
Anywhere. Maybe you can go back to bitterrock.com or...
Yeah, let me begin with the kind of person that I was when I was small, and maybe connect it to what I do now, and then jump back to what I started doing. So even when I was a kid, I used to be called a person who tinkers a lot.
Okay.
And the cliche stories about how you break down all the clocks and the transistors and the radios and try to fit them in. So I was one of them.
A curious kid.
A curious kid, and trying to do stuffs that everybody said don't do.
Right.
So even when I started my journey as a professional after my master's in business administration, I worked for a media company. And even while working for a media company, I was already trying my old tricks, old stuff of what else can I do this? What can I do to make things happen? And fast forward to 2022, I do consulting work and training work on entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises, because I feel that I have learned so much as an entrepreneur that there is so much more to give. That in my over 25 years of experience, I would want the SMEs and the startups not to take that 25 years and not make those mistakes. Because when I started out, I made a lot of mistakes. And as you said, I was ahead of time in some matters. But that is basically the mix of things, that I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to help organizations, and I felt that was where I really fitted in. And even when I started my own journey, it was about helping solve a problem. Right? And if I could solve a problem and maybe therein package it in a way in which you can make money out of it, and that's where entrepreneurship was born. Looking at innovation in trying to solve problems. And even now, as a consultant and a trainer, what I try to do is to identify the problems that they're trying to solve and see that they can come up with some innovation solutions.
Right. Because I really like the thing about what if kind of character you have every time. So you say from when I was a kid, I was trying to understand things and try to challenge the conventional wisdom, right? That's what we need in innovation as well. If we just do the things for the sake of doing, then we are just fitting into the status quo. And you are always questioning the conventional wisdom, always trying to figure out new ways of doing things that made you what you are here today. So when I introduced you today to my listener, I started as you as an entrepreneur, you as a trainer, and you as a consultant. So you wear so many different kind of hats. If you have to pick one, then what would be that?
I would say that the entrepreneurial mindset is very important. The entrepreneurial mindset, in my own definition, as I understand, is not to be okay with what you have, but try to do something more than what there is. That if you do the same thing again and again, you cannot find different solutions to it. Right? So if there's a problem, then you make the same thing again and again, the problem will not go away.
Definitely.
And that entrepreneurial mindset is very important, because until and unless you are passionate about what you are doing, then you'll not be able to put in the time and the effort that is required. Right? And this is very important because as an entrepreneur, you say that you do not have time.
Right.
Right? You start at 9 o'clock and you don't end.
Right.
But in a conventional job, people say that, no, I start at 9 and finish by 5 or so on and so forth. So their working time is limited. But if somebody is interested in singing or playing a guitar or dancing, then they would do that even in their after hours. So that, I feel, is an entrepreneurial mindset, which is very important to have in every individual. That you are seeking always something new to happen, some new solutions to come back, and you're not resting with what has happened before.
Right. So you try to portray yourself as someone with an entrepreneurial mindset, even when you are solving problems for your client as a consultant, or capacitating them, training them with new skills. That's quite interesting. Now, I just want to move back to your entrepreneurial journey itself,
Right.
and especially with the rainwater harvesting, because whenever people hear about Suman Shakya or Suman, then they think, oh, the guy who started rainwater harvesting. So how did that all started? Like, like people think, oh, it's just an idea. No, it's not an idea for an innovator like us, right? Because there are so many thought processes, there are so many methodologies, there are so many iterative processes as well. So I'm more curious to know more about like how rainwater harvesting, you could have done some other techie bits, right? But you went for rainwater harvesting. What were the processes and how were the earlier iteration, and how it is going so far?
Yeah, so this also started again with a problem itself. So I belong to a very core area of Patan in Nepal, where we have always thrived with water innovations.
Right.
And over the years, with the modernization of the country and the development, somehow water seemed to have been ignored to a point that
Right.
you have access to water 24 hours a day, even 25 years ago, and then suddenly you do not have access to water. And then the piped water came in, there was a solution in the beginning, and later on, you then only got water once in 3 days, once in 5 days. So you're always short of water. Then what do? As a busy person, then you buy a tank of water.
Right.
So I was trying to figure out as to how you can, maybe there's a solution to it. Maybe there is ancient wisdom which our ancestors used to use, and where water used to be in plenty. So can there be a solution to it? While I was looking for a solution, while building my own new house in 2011, end of 10 and 2011, I met Tyler McMahon. So he's from US, and we met up in a club where we discuss communication and leadership. That's Toastmasters. And he talked about his speech on rainwater harvesting.
Right.
And I just said that apart from what you're speaking on, can you actually do this thing?
Right.
Because by then I had asked around people that I knew, and nobody said that there is a service that is provided to a household where you can make a rainwater harvesting system and work for your house.
Right.
So then Tyler comes around and says that, no, I've done this. He came in as a Fulbright scholar, did a lot of study in Kathmandu about water. And I said, hey, if you want to try it out, why not? My place. So I took him to my engineer, my friend, and he came back and said that, Suman, you always come up with these weird stuff,
Right.
Why will you not stop? And look, this is your own house. It's not somebody else's that you're experimenting on.
Right.
So can you do this? And then I asked Tyler back that, can you do this? Because you're an American who will look into this. And he said that, no, I've got few technician friends who can make this happen.
Right.
So I give the go-ahead. My engineer friend Grumbling said that, okay, we'll work it on. So when we installed our system, the rainwater harvesting system, and along with that, we had a biosand filter system, which would filter the well water. So from 2011, I shifted in, and this is 2022. I still don't have a KUKL government connection line at my home. Right? So I'm water independent.
Right.
In a way that 6 months I live out of rainwater, And the other 6 months, I use the well water, filter it, and use it in all my my home. And it's doable. And till now, it's working absolutely fine.
So you are water independent.
Yes, yes. And even during the earthquake, my house was one of the houses that people used to come for water because we had access to water. Even the office, which we were working out, we had water and electricity for that matter because we were using solar. And people were coming in to charge their laptops, their mobile phone, their chargers. And we did some work, earthquake response work with the volunteers also. It was because our office became the central hub because we had electricity and water as well. So it is a simple solution that if you could tweak it to the modern likings, it works absolutely fine. And then I used to buy 2 tankers a day. And if you calculate by today's prices, it's around 5,000 rupees a month, which is 6,000 rupees, around $500. And these 10 years, I've saved around $5,000.
Right.
Yeah, so, and that's the price of water that people do not understand. Right? And it was a very simple innovation that we worked on. And it was a solution that was useful and was proven in the ancient times and how our water systems work in Nepal. And we just gave it a flavor in which you can use it in a simple, small household as well. And it works absolutely fine, Yutsav.
So the experiment started at your own house.
Yes, 2011.
2011, right, with a couple of your friends. And again, you were trying to challenge the conventional wisdom by trying to experiment new things, which would have failed, right? And how that became more commercialized enterprise over the past 10 years. It started from your home, and then I'm sure like one day you were like, oh, it works for me, I'm happy, that means more people might this kind of service. Like, how did that go?
So when it started, we really didn't have an idea that this would form into a company.
Right.
So after working this out, and I asked Tyler if he would need any help or has he thought about starting a company, because I felt that I had many friends in my circle who could utilize this solution. And he said that, no, we were already thinking about it. We really didn't have the business acumen to work on it. But yeah, it would be very good. So in my office, we had a little bit of space. So it actually started like a skunk work,
Right.
So it was like a garage setup in the beginning, which just had one room to start with. And that's how Smartpani was born.
Right. So when we think about a business, right, like it's a very new concept. People are more used to buying water from a tanker or in a jar, right? And all of a sudden, people hear, okay, you can harvest rainwater and you can become water independent. Yes, there's a lot of novelty there. There's a lot of innovation there, usefulness as well, of course. But at the same time, like how people perceive it, oh, it's just the water falling from the rain, and why should I pay for this one, especially considering the initial investment. I remember you said like it just cost you the price of iPhone, right? that was your like pricing strategy, and I completely bought that one. How was it? Like, how was the beginning of the initial journey, basically, like to convince people or to market people?
I would say that the perception has not changed in the past 10 and a half years. It's still the same. People feel that this still does not work.
Right.
And somehow it has been ingrained in the psyche of educated individuals, if I may call them, is that they're looking for simpler stuff, convenient stuff, which is fine. As from a user perspective, that is also very important. But to kind of push back the very notion that you can't use rainwater.
Right.
That I feel is something that is yet to be cracked, even in the past 10 years.
Right.
And we still feel we find resistance from would-be clients and prospective buyers about how this will work. Because it's almost as if they have never heard of it.
Right.
Or even if they have heard of it, they still feel that it doesn't work. And in the initial phases, everybody was against this, saying that, Suman, again, you have started something that, why do you want to always go against the tide? You have done enough already, so why do you want to go back again? And my simple observation then was that when I first started with Tyler and Friends, it was not about really making money out of it. I had other initiatives to do that. But I felt that in our region, especially in Asia, and including Nepal, the first thing that we offer to our guests when they come home is a glass of water, right? And water is so spiritual in our part of the world. And if I could do something by which I could provide water to so many people, I felt that would be my karmic blessing in a way.
Right.
It is more of my way of giving back to the society a little bit. Right. And even now also, we don't price it in a manner in which we make a lot of money, but it is about providing that solution and access to good quality water. So that perception has still not changed, to answer your question there. Mm-hmm. But somehow I feel that people are still resistive because they really do not know the answer. People are bought in by different kind of optics that they look at and do not compare. And we have said that even from a return on investment perspective,
right,
you still save money if you do this.
Right.
But that is a jigsaw puzzle that we are still trying to solve, and we feel that we are getting there after such a long time in working many iterations of the product. The first iteration that we have, and now there's a complete differences. And we are improving on that product to make sure that it also appeals to that small section of people's mind where there would be a sudden flip in accepting that product and moving on.
Right. Because since we also do some work in the space of innovation, right? We understand what you go through, because when people hear innovation, then, this is pretty cool, right? But at the same time, people tend to forget that it brings change, and for that change, you need to unlearn so many things. At the same time, you have to reskill yourself, right? And somebody gave me a really interesting example the other day when we were talking about waste management and especially source segregation. They said people understand there is a negative impact of plastic waste, but people still do that anyway. Why? Because it is if you ask young people to sign up for retirement policy. And that was a really good analogy given to me, because even to me, if somebody says okay, this is your retirement plan, on paper it sounds fantastic, but I do not see that benefit immediately. So I'm trying to, connect with Smartpani itself, right? Yes, there is a lot of savings there, more convenience. You don't have to, call a tanker guy and, get water delivered at your place. And at the same time, you are water independent. But at the same time, as an innovator, sometimes maybe we communicate in more complex language, or maybe we are not sleek with marketing. So that's what we are trying to question ourselves as well sometimes, because sometimes we try to tell people about how great the blockchain is, but we realize that we give a pitch in a way that we are talking to engineers, and it doesn't work for us. So going back to Smartpani and the rainwater harvesting, how many households are using your service right now in Kathmandu or in Nepal itself?
Over the years, we have now done our installations in 29 districts.
Right.
So we have crossed some 3,500 or more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact figure because now there's a separate team that looks into it.
All right.
And we have done not just households, but organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And resorts included,
mm-hmm.
hotels, so on and so forth. But what we are very proud of, apart from the individual households that goes into now, even housing complexes have been calling us, and we have been doing interventions there. What we are very happy and satisfied are the public schools that we have worked with.
Wow.
So we have done over 309 schools
mm-hmm.
as of date. This is public schools, by the way,
right,
not private, right? And we are directly impacting more than 75,000 students
wow.
every year with access to good water. And because of that, they now can clean their hands properly.
Right.
There is water in the toilet also. And because there is water in the toilet, the attendance of girls in school has increased.
Right.
And earlier on, it was not there. No?
Right.
And we feel that this is something that we can really scale up across the nation. And what we're looking for are partners who would believe in the mission of providing water to 1 million students over the next 5-7 years that we want to work on, to ensure that students are not bereft of water, that they learn not just having access to water, but we also teach them wash hygiene as well. And then they're also encouraged to take water back home so that they can then influence their parents and their families, so that they also learn that they should have good filtered water, and that will impact the health of their lives. And in and all, the entire nation becomes much more beneficial out of it as well.
I think that's really beautiful, because when we think of water, it's just like something to drink, right? But at the same time, when most of the time, I think like we take water for granted.
Absolutely.
Right? We have got less than 1% of fresh drinking water by statistics, right? But at the same time, we have seen a lot of water scarcity in many, many countries. And now like we are trying to tap into rainwater, which is one of the really great source of water, especially in a country like Nepal. And the beautiful thing, what you said, was about connecting with the public schools, because since we work in the area of child well-being as an organization, we work in the space of education, health, livelihood, and so on and so forth. So one of the thing is the school attendance of girls, and especially for the menstrual hygiene, right? And when you look into the attendance level, then because they do not have got a separate toilet, or they do not have access to the other hygiene material, they tend to miss out schools. So I think this is a really powerful example of tapping in the rainwater and trying to make a difference for these young girls, and also to overall students. It's not just about now education, it's about health as well. And at the same time, connecting with the community, I think that's really amazing. Well done.
Thank you. And this is where I feel that as a company over 10 years, we have also evolved,
Right.
And we have continuously innovated in the sense that what else can we do to solve a larger problem?
Right.
And we saw that the school segment, the solution that we say is called Filter Plus, but it is not just the filter, but there's so many pluses around. And that education, which I feel is very important, will benefit not just the students, but the community at large.
Absolutely.
And that is where I feel that it also appeals to many organizations who are working in this field, and is rightly said, where we can then collaborate and make things happen. We are also having initial success working with the government also, where the local government has started to contribute a bit in designing and implementing this solution as well, so that they are also owning the solution that is there. And the other thing that we do is that we not just install it, but the innovative part is to maintain that system for at least 5 years.
Wow.
The earlier trend was that, yes, there is a dollop of money coming in, and you intervene and provide that product. You install, you have a very good opening ceremony, and after that, 3 months,
cares.
6 months down the line, nobody cares, right? So we as a company, we have an agreement where we pledge to take care of the system for a longer period of time, and we create entrepreneurs to maintain that system as well. Right? So that the local person who becomes the entrepreneur, who manages this, they also benefit out of this maintenance system as well.
So this is more like cascading down innovation at the community level. So they are more capacitated, and the young entrepreneurs take over from there, and they are more sustained.
Absolutely.
Right. since we are talking now about social entrepreneurship or the entrepreneurs, right? This is where like things get more excited when we talk to you, because you have been helping a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I think like innovation really fits into the definition of entrepreneurship itself, right? Because we talk about novelty, solving the problem, so it has got an interconnection with the entrepreneurship. So tell us more around like how young entrepreneurs are doing some of the cool stuffs they are doing for the communities, for the people, like, because you work with the young entrepreneurs most of the time, right? You try to help them, as you say, like you want to help these young entrepreneurs to learn from your experience and, capacitate them most of the time as well. So tell us more about like how the young entrepreneurs in Nepal are doing, and like what are the cool things they are up to now?
Let me take you back to the times when I used to teach,
You're right.
20 years ago. And I used to ask them a question: what do you want to become
Mm-hmm.
when you pass out your, I used to teach at management schools.
Right.
So 90% of them at that time, this was early 2000s, used to say that I would want to become a banker.
Right.
Because that was the most glamorous, the most rewarding also. And nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And only 10% of the students would kind of coyly start their hand and say that they have different options, including entrepreneurship.
Right.
Now, fast forward to 2022, the same question, if it is put up to the class, I find more than half of the class raising their hand to say that I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do something on my own.
Absolutely.
I feel that is a paradigm shift that has happened in our society. And I feel that is very important because earlier on, our society was, at least in Nepal, we were dominated by the government mechanism, if I may put it, in a way in which we were not able to express our thoughts and feelings.
Right.
The only thing that you would strive is to become an employee.
Right.
There was no training or no education given to become an employer.
Right.
Right. And in the last decade or so, if I may call it, even when we started the startup weekends in early 2013 and help a lot of ideation stage to come into a minimum viable product and so on and so forth, we have seen more people, especially the millennials, if I may call them, who do not have the baggage of the earlier mechanism that which the government worked in Nepal.
Right.
So they are now connected. I think the internet explosion and the information overload has also helped them in a way in which they want to now express themselves. So that is a huge paradigm shift. And young people nowadays, when we interact, they are supremely confident about solving problems. And they come up with amazing ideas.
Right.
Which if you take that clock back even 15 years, you would say that Nepal will not see this for another 25 years. And it is happening so soon. So it is also because we have the population dividend, that we have the younger people more and more coming in. But the more important part is that they are now very confident. And we are at a time in which some people who went abroad for various reasons, for studies, work, or for labor as well, they have gained exposure and experience, with which some of them are coming back and trying to do something in Nepal.
Right.
And this is a kind of a watershed time in the history of Nepal, where we are going to see many more young innovators coming in. What is required is maybe an institution, if there is one, or individuals who would nurture them properly.
Right.
There is a lot of energy that is there in the market. Many people coming up with different ideas, different thought processes, and we need to harness this energy. And that is where a good mentoring and coaching is very, very important, because they should not suddenly feel that once you have an entrepreneurial mindset that we talked about initially, success will follow. No, it will put your foot inside the door. After that, you still need to manage things on your own. So that managing part is where we feel that support is there. But at this point in time, it's an amazing time for young people in Nepal.
Completely agreed. Because whenever I interact with young people, I had this opportunity to become visiting faculty for one of the university, and like I was expecting them to, like talk about the modules they are going through, maybe a couple of case study, but they were like, hey, like, can I share my idea? And I was like, yeah, go on. And they were like, we are working in a business model like Uber for nurses, right? So that, like people living abroad can help, like their parents to access some of the really great nursing care. And I was like, wow. Because they are not like theoretical anymore, right? Because I consider myself as old when I look into these young people with a lot of energy. So they say like, we are trying to create a market for nurses because they are underpaid in the traditional way. And at the same time, people are now moving to other countries. So they're worried about the well-being of their parents. So what about like we create something which really helps these folks who are living abroad to provide a better care to their family by also better paying these nurses? And that was a fantastic idea. And they were working around it and they created this cool model. So I myself get so much inspired by them. Now let's talk more around, yes, this is the inspirational bit. Yes, there are like so many enabling things happening as well. As you said, the technology is helping, even the, the way the notion of entrepreneurship is promoted by different actors is really helping, right? And for example, yourself have been promoting and advocating the whole culture of entrepreneurship in Nepal. Having said that, there's so many pitfalls, right? And especially in a country like Nepal or in South Asia, failure is a big no-no, right? And we know like a lot of startup fails, more than 90% of them fails. And we, like the society rewards the winner, especially in a country like ours. We don't celebrate failure, and people want you to fail, by the way. I can share you my example. I wanted to do something in fintech, right? It was a great idea, a lot of investment coming in, but it fell. And people really, were waiting for me to fail. And but for me, it was a learning experience. But I've seen many young startups, right? They felt like their dream was crushed and they left the country.
It happens. As I said, the energy needs to be harnessed.
Right.
And if it is not harnessed properly, then the negative psyche will set in.
Right.
The world average, as you said, 90% of startups fail.
Right.
So people only stop there. In the ecosystem that we have in Nepal, now we have investors also available. You have so many actors in the ecosystem helping each other. But what people do not realize is, why do 90% of startups fail?
Right.
One of the primary reasons is that they do not plan their business. 75 to 80% of the businesses fail because they do not plan and do not have a business plan in writing.
Right.
That is one of the major reasons. The other is that in a country like Nepal, in our part of the world, people are hungry for successes.
Right.
Right? And people would want to write about it. People would want to talk about it. So media also plays a role.
Right.
Media has helped promote entrepreneurs to make them visible, to make their product and services accessible.
Overnight superstars as well.
Which has been excellent.
Right.
But what has also happened is a larger portion of people have also received that adulation before the business idea has been cemented properly.
Right.
Right. And in any part of the world that you go, including Nepal, you will find a section of the businesses which initially when it startups, it sputters and dies out. That's the one thing. But after they taste their first successes, after that, the first then leap that they need to take, that is where 90% fail.
Right.
It is not because they are not successful. They are these successful businesses that cannot take that leap. That is where they need that proper coaching and mentoring. And that is where the entire institution should be focused in helping these entrepreneurs, because they have proved that their idea works, that their innovation has something to do with solving problems now. Right. Now they need to grow. So that is where we'll need to focus and see that is where it is happening. And as you said, failures are not celebrated.
Right.
And it is very important to understand that why a company fails.
Right.
And without failure, how can anybody learn also?
Exactly.
And once people fail, then there is a social ostracization of saying that, oh, you have failed and you have not done well, and so on and so forth. But people do not realize that Edmund Hillary climbed Mount Everest on his 8th attempt.
Right.
Exactly. So that part is, I think, something that is very important. Even in my entrepreneurship journey, some of my initiatives have failed.
Right.
One of the business successes that I had in Vitarak.com failed spectacularly.
Right.
And I look back, then it was a very difficult time for me, because then I knew who my friends were and who were not.
Right.
But when I look back, I think it made me a much more stronger person.
Absolutely.
It made me realize what was missing in what I was trying to do. Like I was running away with the idea, but later I realized that just an idea is not enough. It must have legs to run.
True.
Right? So understanding failure and celebrating failure should also be the norm of being an entrepreneur and having an entrepreneur mindset.
Absolutely. Because failure is really powerful, as you say, like you shared a bit around the Vitarak.com. Because when we reflect back, then we realize, oh, this is something I need to improve on, right? So when I was failing miserably, right? Like I didn't feel like eating for weeks, but at the same time, it's more like I learned quite a lot when I look back now, right? The skill of networking, like the skill of, writing a business plan, creating a slide deck, and how to sell your tell and those kind of bits. So for me, like failure is really powerful tool for the future success.
Absolutely.
And that is really powerful. And like somebody said to me when I was very low in my life, when my startup like miserably failed, that, it's like both diamond and coal are made out of the same chemical element, right? Like I'm not really good at chemistry, but the person tried to explain me. Carbon, right? And if you put quite a lot of pressure on carbon, then the diamond...
The coal turns into a diamond.
The coal turns into a diamond. So if you have failed, if you have got through a lot of pressure, that means, there's a chance that you will become a diamond. And I was like, wow, now it makes sense. And the chemistry lesson was more practical to me, basically. So failure, yes. And now let's talk a bit around enabler as well, right? Like what are those enabling elements in country like Nepal, which is really helping these young people to scale their business, trying to make a difference?
Enablers in terms of the development that we have seen in the last 5 to 7 years has been amazing. Entrepreneurship will only thrive when there is a good ecosystem going.
Right.
And initially there were very few and far in between, but now an entrepreneur or a young person or an older alike, there's a narrative that we need to change, that a startup can only be started by an 18-year-old.
All right.
The global average of a startup, age is 45 years.
True.
Because you gain experience and then you come up and do a startup. So that narrative in Nepal and South Asia possibly will need to change as well. So while that enablers are important, the functioning of these individual ecosystem actors are also important.
Right.
And at the end of the day, what you are trying to do is to create a pipeline.
Right.
At the end of the day, what would a startup would want, to raise investment, to grow and scale up. To do that, you need multiple facets.
Right.
There's a lot of cogs in the wheel that we need. And one of the important part is community building.
Right.
Without community building, you cannot create that pipeline. And that is where I feel there's very little work still has been done. Now, in terms of the other ecosystem players like investments,
Right.
you have even venture capital sort of money coming in.
Right.
You have
Private
even
equity,
even in the banks also helping to an extent, and you have a pool of mentors and other individuals also helping out. So these things are happening, and that will definitely help the entrepreneurs to maybe make that much more better. Now you have co-working spaces, now you have incubators coming in, now you have accelerators being run here and there. So there are opportunities that is coming around, but for an entrepreneur, I think it is very important to have a proper guidance as to what he or she should do. In Nepal, what I've found is people are very hesitant to share their idea, and they feel that it is their only idea in the world.
Right.
But once they share, they would say that, so many countries have already done this, right? So I think they need to be open up in trying to share their idea, knowing that if somebody listens to that idea or sees that idea, they may be able to be replicated somewhere.
Right.
But it is up to you to understand, no? In an age where you retain that idea for 6 months, that idea might be already outdated.
Absolutely.
Right? So that enabling environment is very important, and in that the entrepreneur must come out and seek for help. And without seeking for help, things would not happen.
Absolutely. It's more around building on ideas, right? That's why, like, whenever we try to bring a product or services, we say, like, what about the next version?
Yeah.
Like, are we coming up with iPhone 13 Pro Max, or are we just going to stuck with iPhone 3, right? That's quite important as well, because the other day, like, especially everywhere, like, people try to copy, like, once you become successful. So that's the human nature, I guess, right? Like, it's not just there's one messaging out there, like thousands in the market. So I think for us, like, our understanding has been more around, like, how to keep pushing the boundary, right? As you rightly said at the beginning of this conversation, what if there's a better way to make this thing much better?
Right.
And this is where we think a lot of companies, especially social entrepreneurs, are not pushing their boundary. There are so many great things that's happening. We really, really appreciate, like, all this amazing social value they have created. But what about the sustainability? It works. They get funding. It works for a while, and after that, the business dies, right? If you look into so many agro farming or the agro products, right? It works because there's money coming in after this idea become promising, and after a few years, it's not there anymore. So how do we sustain? One is, yes, mentoring and coaching. Other one is connecting and strengthening the ecosystem. Because there's a hard side as well as a soft side, right? Like, the soft side is the training, mentoring, and scaling bit. The hard side is more around ecosystem building, right? Like the venture capitalist connection with the different kind of actors in the ecosystem as well. So how can Nepali innovators, when I say Nepali innovators per se, entrepreneurs, can thrive in today's world? Because in the recent 2-3 years, we are changing a rapid shift in the geopolitical as well as cultural, technological landscape, right? And the technologies are becoming more obsolete within few years. So how can our innovators can thrive in this, we call it VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world?
Couple of parts to this. If I had all the answers, then maybe I would be sitting in the National Planning Commission, I guess.
Yeah, maybe very soon.
One part is that while the movement, or I would say the movement, and the growth of the entrepreneurs and startups and the likes has happened in Nepal, it has happened purely because of individual initiatives.
Right.
Or I would say private initiatives or smaller initiatives. Now we see larger private organizations like FNCCI and CNI also seeing that, yes, okay, something is happening in this space, we also need to be there. And I feel their recognition has helped a lot of entrepreneurs to access support and even capital to an extent. Like, I am the co-chair at the Federation of Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industries, the Startup and Innovation Cell. Right. And there, the 50 industrialists has pledged that they would invest in in good startup ideas, not just startup, but it could be existing businesses. So that provides a lot of energy, motivation, and enthusiasm to young individuals. So earlier on, these enablers were not there. So that has come around. What is not there? Let me talk about it before I talk about the entrepreneurs. What is not there is that the state support is not there.
Right.
So till now, what has happened is still in its in a small, I would say, pond. But what we need is the entire mountain and the ocean to also participate, and which we have seen where good initiatives have come in countries where the state has supported this movement. Right. Till now, we do not have a startup policy. Right. We do not have a SME policy as well. So, as entrepreneurs put in their money and work out, there is no support mechanism from the state to help them. That is where I feel that many organizations who are there should also work in parallel so that the state support, they recognize, yes, the individual recognition is there, the paperwork is being done, but the implementation part is not happening as yet. Once that happens, what will hopefully will create is maybe incubators throughout the country. Maybe there's a state-supported infrastructure which is there, which will help individuals or startups or companies to come in and experiment with their innovative ideas and support and make sure that they experiment there, they fail faster, so that they learn fast also. So that is the missing piece till now. So while the support is there and the missing piece is there, to come back to your question as to what the entrepreneurs should do is that they should not just depend on their idea. Having that innovative idea and working around it is excellent. Having the prototype made and the example given, fantastic. Getting awarded or getting the prize money to work on their innovation, fantastic. But after that,
what next?
Right? They will need to understand that it is not the idea that sells, but it is the organization that helps the idea to sell. Right? And that is where they will need to realize that if they do not have all the skills, they need to invite co-founders, maybe from the family, friends, or even experts, to come and sit on their board, where the governance is going to be very important.
Absolutely.
Right? Because unless the governance of the company is good, whereby there is transparency on how the money is being used, that is what tomorrow the investors are going to look at. And that is where most of these initiatives have backfired, because the money that they received has gone into their pocket, and it is their money, fair enough. It's up to them how to use it. But after some time, then they suddenly have a cash burn, and they do not know what to do. So reverting to our initial discussion also, where they first taste their initial success, they become fairly successful also. And after that, what? They need to be prepared for that. And for that, the idea then now needs to be which has been seeded and has been proven as an innovative idea, needs to be nurtured into a system in which an organization takes shape. And that is where the writing of the business plan becomes important. And not just the business plan, as we talked a little earlier also, how do you manage the disasters that come in? Do you have a business continuity plan or not? Those things are also important. That must be kept into a sheet in which then you know that what are your prices, what are your costs of your product and services, how much are you selling, and whether you are still making this profit once you build an organization around it. That is very, very important, because most of the time, again, elaborating this a bit, is that I have seen initiatives by young people who have said that I can make this product for, say, $2 or, say, $5, right? But once they get multiple orders, they do not know that they have not put in their rent or even their own salary into their cost. And once the bigger order comes in, they now know that they cannot sell it at $5 because their cost itself is $6. So that planning, that aspect of how you need to then scale up is very, very important, and that's where entrepreneurs should focus on.
Right. So a good management skills is required. When I say management, like entrepreneurial skills, especially managing your finance, your books, doing a bit of marketing, like optimizing your operations.
Yep.
So making sure you are like cost competitive. You have got the resources left out for the sustainability and so on and so forth. I think that's really important discussion we are having. Since we talk quite a lot around innovation,
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, how do you define or perceive innovation? I know, like, there is no hard and fast answer. There's no perfect answer. For us, like, let me give you a bit of how we think innovation is.
Okay.
Like, we try to associate innovation as this parable of 6 visually impaired men and the elephant, the classic Indian subcontinent story, right?
Right.
This is where like one visually impaired person touches the elephant for the first time and like actually holds the leg, and the elephant is like what you call is a tower or a tree or something, and someone hugs the trunk and says, "Oh, it's like a trumpet," and somebody touches the ear and says, like, "Oh, it's like a saucer," right? So we all have got a different perception of innovation because we have never seen how innovation looks like. So that's why we wanted to learn from our guest, basically, in this podcast series. So, what does innovation mean to you?
I would not go into the technical definition.
Right, definitely.
For me, innovation is coming up with something slightly different in which you are able to solve problems.
Right.
Because if you come up with excellent stuff, but it doesn't solve problem,
Right.
for me, that is not an innovation.
Roger that.
So I keep it very simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like one of the guiding philosophy we have been trying to work around is innovation as goes as 2 things. It's a novelty and usefulness, right? It needs to be a bit of novel, but at the same time, it needs to be useful.
Right.
I think we're on the same page. Maybe we are touching the tree bit of, or the leg bit of the elephant itself. So who knows? Now, like, let's talk a bit around some of the promising technologies that are evolving, especially AI or blockchain or IoT. The other day, I was just going through one website called DAL-E, and that was pretty fascinating. It's an AI-powered open AI system where you just type in like a mug dancing in Kathmandu, right?
Okay.
So the AI generates a picture of a mug dancing in Kathmandu within a few seconds. So at first I found it really fascinating. Oh wow, now I can make an oil paint of a banana, like shopping in Manhattan, right? So it created, this is pretty cool. But then I realized, what about the creative people who have been, like learning different kind of skills, like some digital artists, some painters, how the future is going to look like, because AI is learning everything and they are doing something. But there are opportunities with these emerging technologies, but at the same time, there are challenges as well. So in your opinion, being someone who has been supporting entrepreneurs and young innovators for over a decade, like, how do you see these emerging technologies are going to make a difference in solving some of the pressing problems like poverty, unemployment, difficulty in accessing quality education, and so on and so forth?
These are interesting times. These are definitely interesting times where we have already seen very good examples of how modern technology can impact individuals and lives of a society as well.
Right.
In Nepal, when I talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, I think we need to talk about it in 2 silos.
Right.
One is how do you solve local problems?
Right.
And my focus is mostly there, because we may talk about the other silo, which looks into the international market and so on and so forth. It's not that it cannot be done, but there are certain governing regulations which restricts a Nepali company from starting outside.
Right.
Right? You cannot invest outside. So those challenges, that's why I put it in two silos. And for innovation that happens to solve local problems and generate jobs at the same time, by the way, is I think there is a lot of areas that can be covered, especially in a country like Nepal, where we have already seen how even small initiatives, I cannot take the name because of confidentiality, and they're already working on VR technology for nursery kids, and the uptake is amazing. You know? We've seen that they've done this, you know, and it works very well. Similarly, there are so many in the agriculture sector where you're already finding the upscaling of tunneling agro, where the climate is managed by IoTs.
Right.
And how the temperature is managed, the moisture and so on and so forth, where the yield has become better. And these are young people doing it. Right?
Absolutely.
So, but then to scale, that is a challenge. That's why I said that there must be some organization supporting it or state-sponsored activity by which, hey, if this is something good for us, why not? You know, even to predict the changes in the weather, or even whether the rainfall this time is going to go back by 15 days or come forward by 10 days, or whether flooding is going to happen or not. There is so much of technology around that can be very, very useful, and we have already seen that happening.
Right.
Now, the only challenge is that Nepal does not make anything here. So everything needs to be imported. And the servicing of those technologies become very, very challenging. Maybe moving forward, there would be, again, an ecosystem in that. And I feel that that's already happening with young people coming back with amazing gadgets and gadgetry that would be very, very useful. And those will only make it better.
Right.
Yeah, so it has a amazing impact, even for like the small app that was utilized for on how to properly use a sanitary pad.
Right.
People are nowadays very, very connected on TikTok and so on and so forth, right? So even that, using that medium to communicate is always there. And it needs a different novelty, a different sort of thinking, using the current platform to do that. So that is already there. While in the other silo, there is already a company in Kathmandu by the name of Cloud Factory, if you already know, who are doing international work for more than, I think their clientele would range more than 500, where one of the seminal work that they are doing is to track the number plates of cars and the surroundings, so that when the vehicle, which is unmanned, is going to move in the traffic, it knows how it is moving. Right. And that information is already been done in a country like Nepal. And this is cutting edge technology.
Absolutely. We're talking about the future driven technologies.
And it is happening. It is because somebody thought it would be done here. And there are young Nepali engineers who have been working in this project.
Right.
And this is also possible. So we just got a glimpse into what could happen if some amazing work can be done. You know, we have seen companies like Incessant Rain, who does amazing animation work for big companies like even Disney and even Marvel, for that matter, I believe. You know, so it's happening. You know?
Absolutely.
And we need to talk about this as to how newer technologies can be very, very useful in Nepal.
Absolutely. I think that really inspire all of us, and especially the young entrepreneurs and innovators as well, to think beyond what is happening right now, especially thinking about the future. Like when you're giving me the example of virtual reality, we are experimenting around the augmented reality, right? Because we realized, like a simple tablet or, like a smartphone can really create this imagery which can be more immersive. So for example, when I was a kid, if somebody tried to explain me evaporation and condensation in a whiteboard, then it was really difficult to grasp, right? But if you just take a picture and it becomes a 3D model and it plays, then that is like, oh wow. Right?
Completely different, immersive.
It's something powerful. So we're looking into those as well. Like instead of learning for Apple, if you can see the whole dimension of Apple, right? Or cow, so not just seeing a 2D picture, but the 3D with the immersive experience is something we need for the younger kids. And talking about the IoT platform as well, like maybe we are talking about the same company, I don't know. So there's a company called Prixat Technologies, who is one of our technology partner, and they are partnering with one of the provincial government to install IoT devices in the community so they can do a lot of data mining, especially around the temperature, the humidity, the climate, and everything. So based on the information they feed into the system, the system shows like what kind of crop to be planted and when to harvest it. And the initial data they showed that 30% of the productivity was increased because of their technology, right? So sometimes innovation doesn't have to be about all these cool gadgets, right? It can be really small things. And that's why we are also trying to debunk the myths around innovation. It's not just about AI. It's not just about blockchain. It is about a simple processes as well, as you rightly said. So things are getting more interesting.
Yeah. And on the innovation piece, what I'm really looking forward to, and something which I think would kickstart another huge uptake on innovation and other related entrepreneurial activity, is to find that innovative way to have the state involved.
All right.
So there could be some bottlenecks which could be there, and somehow if like you gave an example where this company is having the provincial government supported, that state support is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
Maybe the next innovation that I'm looking forward is not technology, but there could be a paperwork done in a manner in which it frees up the bureaucrats and help them take decision to support entrepreneurial activity in Nepal.
Absolutely. Who knows?
Yeah,
maybe that is happening right now, or maybe that is happening in the near future. I think that is the level of innovation we are looking into, right? So things get much more easier. So innovation is all about, we want our life to be much more easier.
I would say value added, and while what I would also add is not to demean or forget the ancient wisdom that our cultures have.
All right.
Because what we tend to do is to adopt newer technologies and bypass everything that was there earlier on.
Which was accumulated for generations.
And it is hundreds of years of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that at least in our part of the world, at least in South Asia or Africa, if I may call it, there is a lot of ancient wisdom that is there. And I say this because the Smartpani innovation that we worked on was built on the ancient wisdom. Mm-hmm. It was not something that was suddenly thought of at the middle of the night and the light popped up and said that, okay, we want to do this. It was because it was already done. We only found a better way to do it, a more modern way to do it.
Talking about this indigenous knowledge, I remember I had this really intense conversation with my grandfather a few years back, right? And he actually said, you guys who have studied abroad think you know new things, but you are trying to sometime do something which has got more harm than the value itself. And he gave me this example of how houses used to be built, especially in the southern part of Nepal, Tarai, 30, 40 years back, right? Because he said, why we build those wooden houses with at least 5 meters or 4 meters of height, and then you have got the stairs, because we knew the flood was coming, right? And you guys, especially, the generation after me thought, we were stupid, building wooden houses and stuff, and they started to create a concrete house. Now look, there's a flood. Right, because we thought about it, we had generations of experience, and you guys never consulted us. So, rightly said, indigenous knowledge and building upon those is really powerful. It's not just about creating something new, not just about better value, but at the same time about trying to make sure the innovation is accepted by the larger audience.
Absolutely. Even if you talk about, say, education for that matter.
Right.
Our ancient knowledge is that human beings learn better when experience is engaging. And if you really look into our older way of learning, it was not in a school which had 4 walls,
Right.
but it was in a school that had no walls.
Absolutely.
Right? The Gurukul system,
Right.
where sons and daughters were sent across, and they had to experience that learning, and that's what they learned. And that is what is happening in actual the VR technology. That the newer technology, if it embraces what was done earlier on, and then come up, and I think that innovation could be very, very useful for the humankind, because in our DNA there is always a mechanism to learn in that manner.
Right.
So maybe innovation in those areas is also something that we could work on.
Brilliant. So far, we had really, really great conversation, especially in the space of innovation, entrepreneurship, and so many things. Is there anything we missed out so far?
There could be so many things. I think our
Right.
conversation can only cover so much. But what I liked, Utsav, was the easy pace in which we discussed a bit about what we were doing and how we could include innovation in the modern area that we know of, and how, from my part, I felt that the entrepreneurial spirit is very important. Everybody may not be an entrepreneur, cannot be an entrepreneur, but to have that entrepreneurial mindset is very, very important. And the current work that I do is also to support individuals and organizations through Tangent Waves. And that's a company that helps individuals and organizations to grow in a manner in which you understand their problem properly, you empathize with them first, and then see that you are not giving them a silver bullet for every problem that they come across.
Absolutely.
Because every initiative is different,
Right.
every individual is different, and every entrepreneur, or nowadays especially a group of entrepreneurs that come around they are different. And that is where I help them make better decisions for themselves. And I think moving forward, entrepreneurs will need to leave behind the thought that they can do things on their own. Innovation, maybe their idea is very, very unique, but they now really need to work in a team and make things happen. Because
Right.
without a teamwork, success is not going to be guaranteed. And why a team is that as an individual, as an innovator, you may have a certain skill set, but you cannot be expert in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to find those individuals who would complement your strengths and make it very, very strong, right? And among them, one has to be a good communicator, right? Either the innovator himself or herself, or somebody in that team, because at the end of the day, you need to pitch your ideas, be it in a competition,
Right.
be it to an investor, be it to a bank, or even to say that, hey, I've got some fantastic innovation that you might want to take a look at. So I would feel that teamwork, communication, and leadership are those skill sets that every innovator must inculcate either in themselves or among team members as we move forward.
Okay, that's a fantastic way of closing this conversation. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, as always, especially around innovation, around entrepreneurship, and about all the cool things you have been doing for quite a while. Thank you so much for coming to our podcast series and enlightening us with so many amazing stories, amazing information. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Utsav. Thank you to you and your team for having me over and for allowing me to share my thoughts so freely. I hope I've been able to add value to your initiative, and I'm sure that together we can do more.
It's an absolute pleasure, and the conversation was wonderful. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.